All right, hit the wrong button there. There we go. That's the one. That's the one I meant to hit. Welcome everybody to yet another live episode of the Rough Report. I am Jimmy Ruffian, broadcasting live from here in downtown Toronto. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. A little irregular that we go on a Sunday, but my schedule's been a little wonky and irregular these days, so kind of just going with the flow there. If you are watching, let me know that you're here. Feel free to comment. I love seeing your comments in the live stream. Got a few things to talk about today. We're going to talk about Impeachment Part 2 and the Boogaloo boys. Of course, we all know how that all ended up by this point. We're going to be talking about how the Special Investigations Unit of the in Ontario found the OPP guilty of, in fact, shooting an infant in heinous and ridiculous circumstances. So we'll be talking about that, and also going into a bit about Gina Carano and her firing from The Mandalorian and Star Wars, and how evidently Ben Shapiro has come to her career rescue. So we'll definitely be talking about that as well. Ooh, quarantine date night, Jessica. That sounds exciting. Oh yeah, it is Valentine's Day. That is true. I almost forgot about that. These weird times have thrown me off in terms of, doing normal stuff. Nat isn't here right now. She is on her way home, so hopefully we'll have a nice evening together after that. And, trying it out a new microphone right now. It's not mine. I'm borrowing it. But, yeah, this is mainly a microphone that I intend to use for vocals, like music, the music stuff. So I wanted to, but I figured I might as well plug it in and use it for the show. But these kind of microphones have a tendency to pick up a lot more background noise, so you might hear my vents or my furnace kick on or something like that. So I apologize in advance if that happens. Oh, and it's an anniversary as well, Jessica. Happy anniversary. That's super exciting. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to get to here was talking about, of course, the impeachment trial. Donald Trump has, in fact, been acquitted, which I found admittedly mildly surprising. Like, there was, of course, a huge part of me that was not surprised at all. All things considered, you set your expectations low in terms of any semblance of actual justice being achieved, right? Anybody in a position of power actually, being held accountable for their actions in any real way. We've collectively set the bar real low there, right? We don't expect the system, whether it be here in Canada or in the United States or any almost any country, especially powerful ones in particular, to hold the people in power or who have power responsible for anything. But nonetheless, in this particular circumstance as well, it's so obvious what took place. It's so obvious that Donald Trump was guilty of influencing and inciting what happened on January 6th, and that it very much did justify a speedy go at an impeachment process. I don't know how that it isn't obvious to someone. It's a basic denial of reality to think that, this is somehow not due process or undemocratic or unconstitutional to attempt to hold a president who has done the actions that he did, that we all know he did, and hold them to account. It's wild to think that they make or made that argument, and that to some degree it was successful, or it was completely successful. I don't know. I feel like, based on what we're about to watch in the clip I'm going to show you from the opening statement of one of Trump's lawyers, it pretty much didn't matter what they said or what their defense would have been, because this is ridiculous. Here, let me get it up on the screen here.
Is done with cold blood and reflective thought. We are so understanding of the concept that people's minds can be overpowered with emotion where logic does not immediately.
Sorry, I just wanted to go back a bit there.
Some of you, I've been a lawyer 35 years, longer than me. Many longer than me, probably. And we know we have a specific body of law that deals with passion and rage, blinding logic and reason. That's the difference between manslaughter and murder. Manslaughter is the killing of a human being upon sudden and intense provocation. But murder is done with cold blood and reflective thought. We are so understanding of the concept that people's minds can be overpowered with emotion where logic does not immediately kick in, that we have recognized examples that otherwise would be hearsay and said that, no, when you're driving down the street and you look over at your wife and...
Okay. So this is... He's making the type of argument that you probably think by now that he's attempting to make, if you haven't seen this already, that this is everything that happened on January 6th. Like he says before this, that, like, nobody denies that what happened on January 6th was heinous and awful. But then he goes on into this, where he starts basically constructing this argument that they were just so passionate and overcome with emotion and feelings that, it basically saying, how could you hold them fully responsible, really, when they're just so overcome with emotion, and hold Donald Trump responsible for some of the things he said when he was so overcome with emotion. Like, you don't have time for reflective thought. That is, of course, completely ridiculous. Does this even need to be explained? Do I need to go into detail that, like, no time for reflective thought? This was planned for weeks. This has been brewing in the Trumpism for 4 years. 5 years, really. To think that there was no reflective thought here, it was all reflective thought. They were reflecting on how, progressives existing and making things progressive was upsetting and threatening to them. And I think they thought about this plenty, especially Donald Trump. But Donald Trump only runs on his, base instincts and me stuff, right? So that's basically his only setting. But anyway, he goes on into this bizarre example of what would count under this, recognition of lack of reflective thought as seen under the law.
You say, hey, you know what? That guy's about to drive through the red light and kill that person.
Let me go back a bit.
Testify to what you said, because over at your wife and you say, hey, you know what? That guy's about to drive through the red light and kill that person. Your wife can testify to what you said, because even though it's Technically, hearsay is an exception because it's the event living through the person. Why? No opportunity for reflective thought. And there's all sorts of examples.
If there's all sorts of examples, why did you say that one that sounded all convoluted and I don't think anyone really understands what you really meant? That was just like, did that come off as word salad to anybody else? Like, I can't make heads or tails. You say to your wife, that guy's about to kill that guy because he's going to run the red light. And then your wife can testify in court that you said that? Is he the one that's in court? Like, what is this example? It's like, you're supposed, like, the whole thing with lawyers is that they can present a cohesive argument. Like, what is this? And then it gets just more bizarre from there.
That we recognize in the law for why people immediately desire retribution, immediately recognize in the law that people can be overcome by events.
First of all, like, where was this kind of understanding from anybody that would argue in defense of Trump or Republicans? That the overcome of emotion, watching your black brothers and sisters be slaughtered by the police on a regular basis, and the overcome of emotion that might come with that. Yeah, no connection from those people on that, huh? Okay.
And senators of the United States.
Oh, this is great.
They're not ordinary people. They're extraordinary people, in the technical sense, extraordinary people.
What does that even mean?
When I was growing up in suburban Philadelphia, my parents were big fans of Senator Everett Dirksen from Illinois. And Senator Dirksen recorded a series of lectures that my parents had on a record.
Record? You don't say.
We still know what records are, right?
Oh, we still know what those are. Like, you're talking to a room full of people older than you. Pretty sure they know what records are. It's a bunch of dinosaurs in there. Come on.
You put the needle down on and
Jesus Christ.
And here's little Bruce, 8, 9, 10 years old, listening to this back in the late 60s. And I would be listening to that voice. If you ever heard Everett Dirksen's voice, it's the most commanding, gravelly voice that
not yours.
Just oozes
not your voice.
Belief and sincerity.
Yeah,
must have been
definitely not your voice.
Phenomenal United States senator. He doesn't talk about ordinary people as we do in the law. We apply the ordinary person standard. He talks about extraordinary people. He talks about gallant men, is the name of the album. And now, of course, in the sign of the times, gallant men and women. And I would watch.
Of course, these days, women too can be whatever the hell I'm getting at.
Television, and I would watch Senator Goldwater or Senator Byrd or Senator Mansfield, Senator Dole, and I would be fascinated by.
Is he just naming Republicans, by the way?
And everybody's parents say this when they're growing up. You could grow up to be a United States senator. You could do that. They're just men and women like you are. Well, then Everett Dirksen tells us that they're not. They're gallant men and women that do extraordinary things when their country needs them to do it. United States senators really are different.
What the fuck?
And
are senators on trial here?
I have been around United
Pretty sure
States
it's the president that's on trial.
2 of them in this room from Pennsylvania, I like to think, are friendly toward me, or at least friends of mine when we're not politically adverse. And I have been around their predecessors. And one thing I have discovered whether it be
Is he really trying to just
Democrats or
bore everyone to
Republicans,
death in this, or?
United States senators are patriots first. Patriots first. They love their country. They love their families. They love the states that they represent. There isn't a member in this room who has not used the term, I represent the great state of fill in the blank. Why? Because
Like,
they're
this
all
is
great.
so
Yeah.
bizarre.
But you think yours is greater than others because these are your people. These are the people that sent you here to do their work.
Like, I can't. It's so hard. Like, I kind of had some ideas on like what I would say in reflection to this, but it's like the more I listen to it, the more it's like, doesn't it kind of just represent itself in terms of how bold on its face, cartoonishly ridiculous this is? Oh, you senators, you're so wonderful. You're extraordinary people. You're better than other people. You're gallant. You're above the common man. Like, what the freaking hell? Like, that in itself is such an anti-democratic thing to say. Like, these people, these senators were elected by the will of the people. That's the idea. Anyway, they're not supposed to stand above people. They're not supposed to represent a higher status of man. Are they? Like, these are people that you're meant to worship? I thought this was not the idea. It's so like, and it's so indicative of a lot of things you see on the right. Like, as much as they seem to hate, the communism and like how authoritative it is, they love authoritarianism. They love being lorded over. They love the idea of the great strong man that they can look at like a king. It's so sycophantic and servile and gross. It's so common through everything that these people say and do. Just wild. So if these senators, yeah, like, no kidding, right? Like, if these public servants again are so extraordinary, wouldn't the thought of threatening them be looked at as rather extraordinary? You would think so, Jessica, wouldn't you? Just this. I'm not entirely. I don't know if I watched the end of this, and I know where he's actually going with this.
With the responsibility of representative government. I feel proud to know my senators. Senator Casey up here in the back, Senator Toomey over to the left. It's funny. This is an aside, but it's funny. You ever
This is an aside?
When you're talking or you hear others talking about you when you're home in your state, they will say, I talked to my senator, or I talked to somebody on the staff of my senator. It's always my senator. Why is it that we say my senator?
Because that's like the shortest way to say it. It's not like a possessive pride thing. Oh, it's so like, God. What is with this, like, worship politicians argument he's trying to make? Like, is he trying to, like, really suck up to the Senate there and to get them on his side and, like, butter them up? Like, it's just so weird and bizarre. But, yeah, okay. That's enough of that clip. Moving on. Let's go to this guy, this other lawyer, who's at least a little more coherent in his argument, despite it being a ridiculous one to itself. Yeah, he kind of goes after the constitutional side of it and the fact that Donald Trump was given no due process, although it going through Congress and like the impeachment process and in this trial happening is literally what due process is. But here we go.
The denial of due process in this case, of course, starts with the House of Representatives.
How whiny is that an argument? Like these babies.
The House of Representatives denied every attribute of fundamental constitutional due process that Americans correctly have come to believe is part of what makes this country so great. How and why did that happen? It is a function of the insatiable lust for impeachment in the House for the past 4 years. Consider this.
Donald Trump,
insatiable lust for impeachment.
To impeach.
Donald Trump has already done a number of things which legitimately raise the question of impeachment.
Yes, even by 2017.
Respect this president, and I will fight.
Why should she?
Every day until he is impeached.
That is grounds to start impeachment proceedings. Those are grounds to start impeachment. Those are grounds to start impeachment proceedings. Yes, I think that's grounds to start impeachment proceedings.
I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to call for the impeachment of the President of the United States of America.
I continue to say, impeach him! Impeach 45! Impeach 45!
So we're calling upon the House to begin impeachment hearings immediately.
On the impeachment of Donald Trump, would you vote yes or no?
I would vote yes.
I would vote to impeach.
Because we're going to go in there, we're going to impeach the mother.
But the fact is, I introduced articles of impeachment in July of 2017.
We don't
like they're making it sound like this scary and ominous thing that they're like just bloodthirsty to impeach this guy, ignoring the fact that he was constantly doing things that warranted them saying that. Like this wasn't just like coming out of nowhere. He was constantly doing ridiculous things. Like the deliberate alternate reality, right? Like this is just a common thread, and now we're seeing more of it from these lawyers throughout this impeachment trial. It's just nope, that what you think is real is not real. Here is reality as it suits us, and it's insane. It's maddening, and it feeds the direct type of hysteria that leads to what happened on January 6th. When you're constantly trying to portray your political enemies or the people that aren't politically allied with you as cartoonish villains. Meanwhile, you behave as the cartoonish villain. Yeah. The alternate reality that they've successfully created in the eyes of so many people is it's not going away anytime soon. It's extremely dangerous. It's and woven into a certain collective psyche. And Trump can be gone. Trump can end up getting arrested by the Southern District of New York. Let's hope he does. Strong chance of that happening. A lot of it has to do with frauds he committed even before he was president. We all know there's a lot of that. So, yeah, like you can throw him in jail, whatever. The thing that made him, the elements that boiled to a point on January 6th, none of that stuff is gone. None of it. They may be just slightly less emboldened now because their boys aren't in power and not constantly being talked about on the news in the same way or capacity. But, yeah. It's here to stay for a long time, and a lot of those people they're misdirected, miseducated, misinformed outrage and constant sense of aggrievement that fuels them. is not going to go away. Like, these people want to talk about how the left is constantly aggrieved. That's their entire MO, like, is getting upset that gay people exist, that Spanish people exist, that, just immigrants in general exist and are around them. That is an affront to their freedom and their values unto itself. This ridiculous level of agreement and need to make everything a homogenous pool of dull culture while triumphantly saying how much of an individual you are, while taking every opportunity to deny people their individuality. So many layers of just hate that fuels this. And you can say there was a lack of reflection, all right, but it wasn't a lack of time for reflection. They reflected a lot on how much they hate people who are different than them and represent this demonic villain that the purveyors of this false reality have shown you. And, I definitely don't have all the answers on how to defeat that, but I can just say we got to keep talking about this and got to keep hammering away at this and not let it slide, because like this kind of like propaganda that we're seeing right here, where it's just like impeach him, as if they don't have a reason to be saying this, as if there isn't extraordinary reason for them to be saying this, as if the fact that the Senate let it slide the first time wasn't a crime unto itself. It's complete skewing and denial of reality and obfuscating the truth, very much on purpose. So, let's get... I just want to check my Facebook real quick there. My background there is very messy. You shouldn't have to see that. My tiles are everywhere. It's awful. Let me see here. Oh yeah, the Gina Carano thing. Okay. Gina Carano signs a new movie deal with Ben Shapiro after Star Wars ousting. Sorry. So, in case you didn't know by now, Gina Carano said, who has played Cara Dune on the hit series Mandalorian, which I personally adore. I'm a big watcher of the Star Wars and a big fan of that show. And I enjoyed her in it, to be honest. But, when you say horrendous things using your public status and public platform, horrendous things such as equating having a certain political ideology, such as being conservative, to being a Jewish person during Nazi Germany, and equating it to the Holocaust, is disgusting in that it is clearly anti-Semitic, in that it's like Holocaust revisionism, in that, she even said something in the comparison to like thousands of Jews as opposed to, millions. It downplays the severity of that genocide, and it's insulting. And especially when a lot of your bosses are Jewish people, and a lot of the people in the company are Jewish people, and you say something like that, you're going to get in trouble, especially a company like Disney, who is extremely concerned about their public image and how the people that represent their company reflect on that public image. That's part of how they behave as a company under their free will that you seem to love so much. You can have criticisms over how you think Disney conducts itself in that capacity, but it's, fundamentally their will to do so in how they represent themselves and poise themselves as a company. So Ben decided to swoop to Gina's rescue and offer him a movie deal. I'm sure this is just going to be a box office smash. You can count on that. But, let me go into a second, just the mere words that she used in the capacity of comparing having a certain political idea with genocide. Like, people's political beliefs are a reflection of the things they say and do and how other people should be treated, and promoting certain ideas on the treatment that other people get and other people are exposed to. Comparing that to literally an extermination based on the bloodline and culture that you were born into versus the things you believe and say and do, and somehow trying to make those sound like they're equal, is fundamentally absurd. It's ridiculous. That's they are nowhere in the same ballpark. Like the fact that you think this is a worthy comparison is ridiculous unto itself. But so it's just outright stupid. But on top of that, it promotes what we know historically to be hateful anti-Semitic rhetoric. And she was held accountable for it. She's not being exterminated. She's not being thrown into a pit. She lost her job. And equating this cancel culture even to being like, supposed cancel culture, let's put that in big air quotes, to some level of, political persecution is bonkers as well. But we'll get into that a second as Ben Shapiro is going to talk here. I'm going to pull up this video here.
Today than impeachment is actually a story that seems rather minor on the surface. It seems.
Oh yeah. Here, I want to get the very start of that because sorry, I have my camera sort of situated right in front of the screen where the play button is, so I can't quite see it properly. So yeah, what Ben is gonna his little introduction here, I like it.
Honestly, the story that I think is more indicative for more Americans today than impeachment is actually a story that seems rather minor on the surface.
More indicative.
Seems rather minor on the surface, except that we have literally tens of millions of people in the United States who are afraid that the cancel culture is coming for them. And cancel culture does exist. Okay, the culture of...
Cancel culture does exist. I'm just insisting that it does. Going to provide no evidence to that fact. Well, I guess he's going to try.
We are going to get you fired because we don't like your social media posts. Not even social media posts that are extraordinarily horrific, the kind of stuff that would get you shunned in polite society. Just stuff that is a little edgy, right? That kind of stuff, that has impact on hundreds of millions of Americans. Okay, because we have, in the United States, an iron triangle between the Democratic Party and the media and corporations. Okay, that iron triangle goes something like this. The media and the Democrats agree on virtually everything. Democrats have an agenda. The media push that agenda. And then the media and Democrats pressure corporations to do their bidding in order so that they can foster that agenda. So unofficially, they're allowed to use threats in order to make clear what exactly...
That is literal, conspiracy theory nonsense. Like, he is drawing up a mad conspiracy theory. First of all, the Democrats control the media. This guy is on major news media all the time. He, like, you know, you saw the joke that, what is it, on Death to 2020, you know, oh, my new best-selling book, conservative voices are being censored or being oppressed. Like, conservative voices are everywhere. The Daily Wire has a huge platform. Ben Shapiro has a huge platform to constantly whine about how they don't have a huge platform. Again, it goes back to the sense of aggrievement. They must be perpetually aggrieved. They must be the most aggrieved. They must be the most oppressed. Even when it's a complete denial of basic reality, they have to be poised as the ones that are victimized the most. You know, remember the whole thing is like, I'm not a feminist because I'm not a victim. And you people on the left are just obsessed with being victims. Pure projection, obviously. Like, their obsession with claiming victimhood at every possible turn, even when it's an outright lie. How many millions of views does this video have? Even though Ben Shapiro's done multiple things himself that should have got him, that were, like, you know, against YouTube policy in terms of just spreading outright hateful stuff about trans people, about people of color. He's gotten away with that. So, like, really, what cancel culture even in that capacity is he talking about? It's just like presenting the alternate reality in order to be constantly aggrieved. That's the constant thing you're going to see, you know, from these Trump lawyers, from everybody who represents him and is on his side, to people like Ben Shapiro. That is the entire shtick.
They want to happen. Okay, so what this results in very, very often.
And and furthermore, to say that all corporations are in the back pocket of Democrats is hilarious, when it's always the Republicans that are catering to the wealthiest and the richest and the most powerful all the time. All the time. What was that tax cut that Donald Trump gave? Who was that for? It wasn't for the common man. It wasn't for the working person.
Is corporations looking to cram down a particular viewpoint on you and then cancel you, right? That is what many Americans are feeling today. There are polls out there that show that a vast majority of Americans in every single political group, including liberals, except for people on the hard left, feel like they cannot say what they want to say in public because they are afraid that they are going to be canceled, fired, cast out from polite society. Hey, that is a real...
Oh, they're going to be canceled, fired, and cast out from polite society. I wonder what make you feel shunned from this so-called polite society. Perhaps is it saying and doing things that are constantly impolite, that are constantly a breaking of that so-called societal contract of just being a basic, decent person. Perhaps, again, using your public status and public platform to say something extremely gross is, impolite and might make you feel a little shunned by this so-called polite society. It's almost like you're being held accountable for the things you do and say.
Real phenomenon is taking place every single day. And I will say it is amusing to watch as some people on the hard left get canceled, and then they turn around and they're like, why aren't people defending me? We are. It's just that you guys created this society. This actually happened to a socialist moron named Nathan Robinson. He got canceled from the
socialist moron Nathan Robinson, who got canceled. Well, we'll get into this.
Guardian. And he said he got canceled from The Guardian because he had put up some anti-Israel tweet. Okay, now I think he's an idiot. I think that his views on Israel are abhorrent, but I don't think that he should lose his columnist slot over at The Guardian. He certainly would not defend anybody on the other side who got canceled. In fact, he has repeatedly said cancel culture does not exist. Okay, it does exist.
First of all, he has a cup, his mug, that is definitely like purposefully in shot that says leftist tears. Meanwhile, he is constantly crying about how the left is like censoring him and oppressing free speech. And okay, so yeah, of course, I looked into the firing of Nathan Robinson, and of course, if you want to strew the Guardian as strictly leftist, and there are people in the liberal / left, far left spectrum, you will have a varying amount of ideas about Israel in there, but a huge section of the left does not like Israel in the fact that they are an apartheid, genocide committing state. Yeah, a lot of people have a problem with that, including Nathan Robinson. And yeah, he criticized military aid to Israel. And the criticism here that you have to take note of is that the left is looking at something like The Guardian and saying, yeah, like it's, you're on the side of Israel and we disagree with that. You as a newspaper want to create this Israel friendly atmosphere where we cannot criticize them. And that's what we're criticizing. We're criticizing The Guardian for taking that stance. We're not saying we're victims of cancel culture. Like, he just lost his column at The Guardian, and we are specifically criticizing The Guardian for doing that. We're not crying about cancel culture. Nowhere close. That is not the topic at all. That's not, like, it's the old Ben Shapiro shtick where you got to create a total straw man, a total non-existent enemy to draw your wacky ass conclusion from. It's dependent on that. You can't observe reality objectively like that and say, okay, he got fired from The Guardian, and the criticism from any leftist, serious leftist source is not crying about cancel culture, including Nathan Robinson himself. He's not crying about cancel culture. He's criticizing The Guardian and that type of media that tries to insulate itself around criticism of Israel. That is not... we're not talking about cancel culture. We're not crying about cancel culture. We're not worried about cancel culture because, unlike you, we are aware and responsible for the things we say and do. And when we make mistakes, we own up to it. Generally speaking, as an ideology, let's say. Can't speak for everyone 100% of the time on that one. But yeah, unlike the ideology that you're trying to represent here, Ben, it's so completely obviously bonkers. I just can't with this shit. Like, if you only consume the type of media that Ben Shapiro is espousing and on the side of, if this is the only stuff you take in because you're told that this is what the real stuff is, or whatever the case is, it like appeals to your confirmation bias, whatever. Yeah, if you insulate yourself to nothing but this, you will think all these insane, non-existent enemies exist, and that they're all coming to get you, and that they're all oppressing you, and that it's all this dark plot by the Democrats to control everything.
The fact that there are people out there who want you to lose your job for the sin of saying things they don't agree with is extraordinarily real, and it is happening on a moment-by-moment basis. The latest example of this is Gina Carano. So Gina Carano is one of the stars of The Mandalorian. She plays a character called Cara Dune. And Gina Carano was a former MMA star, and then she was in a movie called Haywire, in which she sort of made her acting debut. She's been in a bunch of stuff since then, and then her biggest role to date was as Cara Dune in The Mandalorian. So she's sort of the ally of The Mandalorian, who's played by Pedro Pascal. Now, apparently back in November, according to The Hollywood Reporter, there was talk about giving her her own spin-off show because Disney Plus has decided to move into a bunch of Star Wars spin-offs, right? Just like The Mandalorian. Well, then they decided we're not going to do that anymore. You know, we've decided that we're not going to do that. Apparently, they had decided that back in November because she had made some social media posts about President Trump, and this made them very angry. And so they essentially removed that possibility. Okay, so again, this is according to the Hollywood Reporter, quote, "This is not the first time Carano, who played former Rebel Alliance soldier Cara Dune on The Mandalorian, has been the focus of social media ire for her political comments. Last November, she issued contentious tweets, one in which she mocked mask wearing amid the novel coronavirus pandemic, another in which she falsely suggested that voter fraud occurred during the 2020 presidential election. A source with knowledge of Lucasfilm's thinking told the Hollywood Reporter, quote, they've been looking for a reason to fire her for 2 months. Today was the final straw." Okay, so finally, they got Cara Dune. Right? They finally got Cara Dune. They finally got Gina Carano. By the way, what were those old tweets that were so terrible? So she...
I don't even care to get into that part. What I couldn't help but to thinking, like, you know, getting at the idea that, yeah, we don't want to give this woman more attention and more power and more representation of our brand when she says and does things that we feel are counter to this company's image and what we want to put into the world as people. And he's being so aggrieved by that. What I did, like, does Ben ever have, like, people who would say stuff like that on his show or on the Daily Wire? If somebody who is a columnist for the Daily Wire one day decided to come out and have some strong criticisms of Israel and say some of the things that, say, this Robinson fellow had said in relation to U.S. aid to Israel, how long would he keep working at the Daily Wire, do you think? How long would you think he'd be able to keep writing those articles? How long do you think somebody like that would be able to continue and promote, say, something from any kind of leftist perspective and criticizing, say, Ben Shapiro, and says something, you know, because he obviously doesn't care to a great extent, you know, being a Jewish person himself, he doesn't really seem to be overly concerned with right-wing anti-Semitism. But yeah, if they said something like personally about him or his ability to do political commentary and were critical of him, how long would you think he'd still be working together? Probably not very long at all, because Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire don't have any leftist voices in it whatsoever. They are completely insulated outside of that world, and they don't allow any criticism of their ideology to exist within their brand. So, isn't it funny that they are really upset at Disney for doing the same thing, essentially? Like, hey, Ben, where's my platform on the Daily Wire? I'm practically being oppressed because I don't have a column on the Daily Wire and a segment on the Ben Shapiro show. It's obviously oppression, and I'm extremely aggrieved. See, thanks, Ben. It's Ben Shapiro that did that, and the fact that I don't have a nicer microphone stand because Ben Shapiro's denied me a column on the Daily Wire. Freedom of speech is truly dead, people. Truly dead. Anyway, enough of that idiot. For the last little bit of the show, I'm going to get, unfortunately, a little bit serious in some Canadian news. OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police, the Special Investigations Unit, basically the internal investigations that investigates police-related incidences, did find that the police shot and killed this Kawartha Lakes boy, an infant, because the father had apparently kidnapped the child and was on the run in his truck with him, and 3 officers just emptied clip into the truck. Obviously, gross negligence of their duty. It's disgusting on so many levels. The fact that 3 officers can just totally unload their weapons into a vehicle that they either should have been aware, had an infant in it, or if they were not aware, why are they firing their weapons into a vehicle where they're not sure of the people that are inside of it? It just shows gross negligence on an epic magnitude. And, you know, people legitimately wonder why we say ACAB, and why we say all cops are bastards, and why we say to defund the police or abolish the police. Like, do you really wonder? Really? It's shit like this. And even furthermore, where's this one quote? Yeah. The 3 OPP officers who discharged their firearms have not availed themselves of an opportunity to be interviewed. Subject officers are under no legal obligation to speak with the Special Investigations Unit. The people that killed that baby are under no obligation to be interviewed and to speak with internal investigations. There is going to be no justice from this. That father has lost his life, and even if he did kidnap that baby, that is not grounds for an execution. Even if he ran his vehicle into a police cruiser, that is not grounds for an execution. Trying to stop someone in a runaway vehicle is a common part of the police job, and just shooting the person inside, and even when things get tough, is insane. To think that that can be normalized and go, well, what would you do in that situation? I don't know. If I was trained properly and wanted to be a police officer that actually served the public, I probably just wouldn't go around shooting people at the first sign of trouble. Like, if you're so brave and putting on the badge to protect the public, but can't for a split second fathom being in danger, that you have to pull out your weapon and shoot whatever is threatening, you can't have that job. You can't do the job. So, people of color and indigenous people can be killed with impunity. And evidently, even white babies can now be killed with total impunity. Sure, this is recent news that the SIU released this. But I'm calling it now. Nothing is going to change. Nothing's going to happen. Nothing bad will happen to those officers. It's just going to be business as usual. That's all I think I have to say on that. I think we should take a moment to reflect on that fact, that there is, in so many circumstances, whether we were talking about the impeachment at the beginning of the show and everything that entailed, to, Ben Shapiro with his huge platform and voice and media exposure, claiming that he's an oppressed voice, to this, when it comes to these sort of systems of power and propaganda and a very real oppression, there is no accountability. There is no way to hold them accountable. They have insulated themselves from that. And unless we do something to seriously change that system, it's not going to. People who have power and abuse it are not going to willfully give it up. They're just not gonna. It's never happened in the history of mankind, and it's not going to start happening now. We have to be able to pull together in a functional way that can hold people in power and people in positions of authority properly accountable for the wrong things that they do. And, you know, I always try and cap off the show with kind of the hammering home the message of, you know, a few basic things. Working class power and getting us our proper wages and our proper compensation and fixing poverty is, if we can band together on that, it's only upwards from there. If we can band together on the simple unifying factor that we need to have access to basic dignity and economic advancement. If we can get that done, if we can come together and have real worker power and solidarity again, we can work together to solve these greater systems of oppression, such as lack of police accountability, lack of political accountability from politicians, so many things. So let's band together on the basic stuff that affects all of us. And once we get a taste for the victory and the advancement and the progress that we're capable of, we can keep going. And that's the message I'm going to leave you all with. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. It has been a good time. I felt a little more natural going into this episode than I think I have all year. As always, our dear leader of Antifa, This Duck, playing out our theme song. So yeah, I want to thank you all again so much for watching the Rough Report. This is going to be available after the broadcast ends, so you're going to be able to watch this episode over and over again to your heart's delight. And as far as the show goes, it's only going to be onwards and upwards from here. I put a little more, like I said, care into constructing this episode and having some statements prepared. I feel like I'm getting better at this a little bit, maybe. And then in relation to music news and the Rough Go in the music project, different from the Rough Report, in case you didn't know. The Rough Go is the musical project where I make music and write songs. And there's a couple available on Spotify and all the major streaming platforms, including YouTube. So if you find the Rough Go, you'll be able to hear some stuff. But aside from that, I'm going to soon be announcing a live stream show. I'm going to be doing a bit more of that because I haven't done it enough over this quarantine stuff. I love performing live, and doing the stream thing felt a little like weird to that, not having like an actual audience in front of me. But I'm going to try and lean into that a little bit more, and and have some more songs and new content released. So keep your eyes, ears, and hearts open to that. And again, thank you